Remember we used to have Halloween parties as children, and we would wrap each other with toilet paper to play Who's the Mummy Now? And I don't know, it's probably not called that, but that's a great name for it. It was a race to
Who's
see
your mummy? Wow, see ya.
Hello, and welcome to Guide to the Unknown. There is no Kristen, and I'm her little brother, Will. And on this very special Monday edition of Guide to the Unknown, we are going to rewind. We're going to replay a topic that we covered almost exactly 2 years ago to set the table for a brand new episode that's going to hit all of your feeds this Friday. Way back on episode 24 of Guide to the Unknown, Haunted Items on eBay and The Mummy, we covered The Mummy. But you know what? Because of the way we used to do things back then, we only gave ourselves like half an episode's worth of time to cover any given topic. And so we didn't really get to dive into all there is to say about The Mummy. So enjoy this flashback conversation where we talk about really fun things, like the sort of supposed quote-unquote real-life curses of The Mummy. And definitely join us this Friday to hear everything new we have to say about The Mummy as a horror movie monster that it was turned into. I actually just rewatched the 1932 original Universal movie monster version of The Mummy, where Boris Karloff played Imhotep. It was super fun, but there's going to be so much more to say about that on Friday. You know what? If you want to join us for the recording of that episode, you can join us this Wednesday on youtube.com/talkbomb at 6 p.m. Eastern. We record Guide to the Unknown live there every single week, so you could join us in the chat, talk back to us, or just hang out with the other people in the audience there. And either way, you'll get more Mummy on Friday. So enjoy this flashback episode, and we will see you later on this week. Here it is, from Guide to the Unknown, episode 24, The Mummy. Mr. Kristen, tonight, I'm going to talk to you about mummies.
Oh, cool.
Including The Curse of the Mummy.
Cool. Oh, great. Yay.
What might happen to you if you unseal a mummy's tomb?
If I curse a mummy?
If you curse a mummy.
Yay.
Kristen, word of advice, don't do it. All right. Now, I've been wanting to talk about mummies for quite some time, to be perfectly honest. I think mummies are interesting, but I do not know much about them. And we all know there was the Tom Cruise mummy movie that came out last year.
Sure do.
Did not do very well. I don't know if you saw it.
No, I didn't.
It was not good.
Yeah.
So it just so happens that as I was starting my research to talk about mummies for this show, I Googled mummy to get the Wikipedia page for Mummy, and I found out that as of this recording, this article was posted yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome.
On NewYorkTimes.com.
Cool.
The FBI and the mystery of the mummy's head.
Cool.
This is a 4,000-year-old mummy decapitated head, Kristen.
That's awesome.
Isn't that rad?
Yeah.
And it is a governor who his tomb had previously been raided, and people weren't sure. He was buried with his wife.
Yeah.
His name was Jehutenacht. He was buried in his tomb with his wife, and then at some point between 4,000 years ago and now, his grave was robbed, and his head was knocked off his body.
Yeah.
Well, I guess all I can really tell you is that a head was ripped off one of the bodies.
Right.
Now, a lot of the remaining artifacts found their way into a museum. They were displayed, but it was displayed as just being a mummified head from Jehutenacht's tomb, not knowing if it was his or his wife's. This article was posted yesterday, April 2nd, 2018, because archaeologists using modern day technology have now determined whose head it is, Jehutenacht or his wife.
Love it when stuff like that happens.
It's awesome. This is like in a way, it's just sort of a story of the triumph of science.
I love that.
It's not common that you're able to actually get a DNA sample from a mummy. A lot of the ways that people end up mummified, there are two ways. One is deliberately being mummified. One of them is spontaneous, they call it. So if you're spontaneously mummified, it's almost like Pompeii type stuff, or like like you died in a dry, arid climate, and you're naturally mummified.
Wow.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
The definition of a mummy expands it so much that it's like, wow, almost everything is being mummified. Embalming somebody turning somebody into a mummy is just preparing them for burial.
Right.
So we mummify people today.
Yeah. Yeah, that I know. Yeah.
Although everybody still thinks about a mummy as being distinctly the Egyptian process, the whole thing of like removing the organs through the nose, jars for different organs, stuff like that.
I'm about to say, I think the people associate kind of, the sarcophagi and things that go along with the body of a mummy with mummying, but it's just a process basically. And then we called them mummies.
Yes, they became mummies.
Right.
And then they became weirdly sort of like, there is something distinctly strange about the fascination with the like dead Egyptian royalty, almost to the point of like just like pointing a finger at them and like dehumanizing them in a weird way, like stealing their bodies and putting them up in museums.
It's very weird.
It's very, very weird.
I think it's partially maybe some racism, but then also fascination with the fact that they were buried with jewels and things like that we value. Yeah. So we want to see that.
Well, it's also interesting because it feels in a weird way like we can't wrap our heads around paying utmost respect to the dead. Like it seems like, in Western culture, we distinctly like a lot of people view the elderly as something like scary or worrisome or whatever. And like, that's not the case. And like,
it's a really good point.
So it's somewhat baffling to be like, you spent countless hours like preparing this person and making sure that they were happy for the afterlife. Like it's very intriguing to think about.
Yeah.
So anyway, a team of scientists. Now, bear in mind, this is where it gets a little gnarly. All right. And if you're watching live, I literally have a mummy's decapitated head on the screen right now.
Yeah.
But it's not that freaky, right? Like
no.
There's something about it that removes the humanity.
Well, it's partially because of this, the
like
gauze or whatever material is wrapped around the face. It doesn't look like skin, which is why I think it's not as scary looking. It almost looks like it's a sculpture or something,
but also
even though it's not.
That feels very academic and professional. It's from the New York Times.
Yeah.
So anyway, this team of scientists were able to use a camera and put it through the neck of the mummy to reach up and inside the mummy's mouth to get DNA from a tooth. And that is how they determined that this is the head of Jehoshaphat himself, the governor of 4,000 years ago. So now they have updated the placard in the museum to give an identity back to this person.
So cool.
Is that not fascinating?
What museum is this in again?
Oh, boy. I don't know. Allie and I went to a museum in London, the British Museum, where they have a gigantic Egyptology section. But this seems to be, Jehoshaphat was sent to the Museum of Fine Arts in 1921. Oh no. This feels like something I should just know.
No, that's all right. It might still be there.
Yeah.
You can obviously, if you guys look up mummies and hit the news thing on Google, then you'll find this article and then you'll find out where it is.
Yeah, I really encourage everybody to read this article.
It seems like that's where it is, Will, because they just said something about the Massachusetts hospital. So yeah.
All right. And they even they show you we've got this rotating 3D image of Jehoshaphat's head, because a lot of the study of mummies has evolved over the course of time where we don't even have to unwrap anything or further destroy how these people were preserved in order to study them. We can put them in MRIs and image their body without removing their wrappings. Really fascinating.
So awesome.
Yeah, really, really crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's only part of the story. My story is sort of all over the place because my topic is just mummies in total. We'll get to some cursed stuff, but first I'm going to tell you some gross stuff.
Okay.
I found out that mummies used to be used for stuff, not just for display and for academic purposes. Literally.
It's like Egyptian mummies, you mean, right? Like what we think of as, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's not that respectful of the dead.
No, this is insane.
Yeah.
This is one of the craziest things I have ever found out for this show. Mummies used to be used for medicinal purposes, by which I mean grinding up dead Egyptian mummies and mummified cats to sell them to people to take as medicine.
Oh, man.
All of this because of a mistranslation. There was an old text that was describing what mummies are, what they do, whatever. And due to a mistranslation, people thought it can heal bones. So they started to grind mummies up. So essentially a person would take a dose of a person to try to heal themselves.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, because of the way that things are, unfortunately, when actual mummies became scarce and available.
Oh my God.
The sun-desiccated corpses of criminals, slaves, and suicidal people were sometimes substituted by less scrupulent merchants. Oh my God. How horrible is that?
That's crazy.
Yeah, but also the art world, I'm sorry, is tainted. Kristen, there is a color of paint called Mummy Brown.
Okay.
It is literally created.
Kind of a burnt sort of umber color.
Yes, that was one of the descriptions that I read of being like, that's why it was used. It would create like very sort of like realistic skin tones, things like that. And I have an example of a piece of artwork I'm about to put on the screen for people called Interior of a Kitchen.
Oh, man.
By Martin Drolling. If you're listening, look it up. It is bonkers. Take a look at this. It is using very sort of like beautiful earthy browns to create this picture of a kitchen with light coming in through the windows.
Yeah.
A couple preparing dinner at a table. It uses the color Mummy Brown.
Interesting.
This is confirmed as having been using mummy flesh to create pigment for paint.
Wait, I didn't understand that. I thought you were just saying there was just a color called Mummy Brown. It was made of mummy stuff?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Very, very literally, Mummy Brown was originally created using skin.
Oh my God.
Dead people.
Wow.
Interior of a Kitchen by Martin Drolling. Look it up. It is beautiful.
Man, those snozberries don't taste like snozberries, huh?
Yeah.
Not going to want to lick that.
Ma'am, you might want to ask your son to stop licking the paintings. Just going to say. I should be asking anyway. But you're
just
really
extra. You don't want him licking that.
He likes it. Let him do it.
Ma'am. You're no.
He likes the brown ones.
So let's get to the idea of the curse
Yeah.
of opening a mummy's tomb.
Yeah.
It's a mix of fact and fiction. A lot of this was sort of people exaggerating, embellishing, sometimes outright making up what happened to people that opened sealed tombs. There are for
as a deterrent from them doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are for sure times that archaeologists would open a sarcophagus and see a warning. But it's not quite what people eventually went on to think that, like, oh, everybody died. Everybody died within a week.
Right.
Whatever. Got sick, pestilence, fear, whatever. One of the biggest misconceptions is that, in particular, King Tut's tomb was cursed.
Cool.
So I'm going to tell you about that.
All right, sweet.
The tomb was opened in the year 1922, which many say launched the sort of modern fascination with Egyptology. The expedition was led by a man named Howard Carter, and it was partially financed by a man named Lord Carnarvon. Okay.
All right.
On the very day the tomb was opened, Howard Carter sent a messenger to his house, his own house. The messenger claimed he heard a faint, human-like cry coming from inside. He opened the door, and where Howard Carter's canary cage was, he looked at it, it was weird, there was a cobra in the cage.
Oh.
Howard Carter's bird was in the maw of a cobra.
word.
So a snake in a bird cage devouring his pet bird. Here's why that's especially symbolic, because cobras, if you think of King Tut, the image of any pharaoh that you might think of, you might think of the image of a cobra coming off the front part of sort of their crown.
Right.
Now, that cobra is a symbol of Egyptian royalty. It's a depiction of Wadjet, the goddess of serpents, and that is called a uraeus. It signifies a pharaoh's claim over the land. So,
cool. With
Howard Carter opening the tomb and a cobra eating his bird, was it a warning, a punishment, a sort of metaphorical?
Doesn't sound great.
It does not sound good. Even crazier, we just read an article from the New York Times about a recent discovery in the world of archaeology, Egyptology. This story was picked up by the New York Times, December 22nd, 1922.
It's cool.
They talked about it.
They've been covering the mummy beat for a long time.
Yeah, they've been working it. They've been working it for a long time.
Yeah.
Within 10 years of King Tut's tomb being opened, there were 11 people of that party that died. One of the biggest that people point to as an example of a curse was Lord Carnarvon himself, as part of the financial operation. He died by blood poisoning when he was infected by a mosquito bite. He got bitten on the face by a mosquito. He was shaving. He cut the mosquito bite.
Well, that's bad luck.
He somehow then got blood poisoning, some sort of horrible infection. He ended up dying. Later, it was discovered that King Tut himself had a lesion on one of his cheeks.
That's cool and weird.
However, Lord Carnarvon had already been buried.
Not for King Tut, but
it wasn't possible to determine if they had a similar looking injury on the exact same cheek. But for sure, that was something that people were like, whoa.
That's a good story.
Yeah. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself, creator of Sherlock Holmes, suggested that Lord Carnarvon had been killed by elementals, which were created by King Tut's priests and ordered to guard the tomb.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had a lot of weird real-life ideas.
Did he?
Yeah. I can't think of anything else. Well, he was a spiritualist. He was like an enthusiast of that movement.
Wow.
I know that there have been other things where I'm like, of course, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle had his little paw in this.
Oh man,
some weird things. Yeah.
I would love to know more because I found this fascinating.
Yeah.
Because it sounded like just somebody who's already known to be like sort of creative and inventive, being like, yes, he was. Let me think for a second. He was killed by elementals.
Of course.
King Tut's priests ordered to guard the tomb. It's just like, are you using your imagination? It sure seems like you're imagining things right in front of me, Arthur.
We know you're very good at that.
Yeah.
Your books are a hit.
Yeah. There were articles written about how there were warnings of dire punishment that would befall anyone breaking into a sealed tomb. Now, neither Arthur Conan Doyle nor those written reports helped anything. All they did was sort of fuel the fire that King Tut's tomb was definitely cursed.
I mean, duh. How would that help anything? Somebody being like, I think elementals went after him.
Yes.
That's not going to, cool the flames.
Right. Now,
Whatever.
also, Lord Carnarvon's half-brother, Aubrey Herbert.
These are great names.
He also died of blood poisoning.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird?
Well, I mean, is it weird, though? Like, maybe it was blood poisoning,
Well, it gets even weirder.
Okay. Was blood poisoning the order of the day back then or in that area?
Well, no, but it was as the result of, I guess, what they thought was a routine surgery. He was having problems with his eyesight, so a dentist removed all his teeth. And then he got blood poisoning and he died. So...
When was this again? This is the 1800s or something?
No, 1922. After 1922.
Oh, that's right, because the article was 1922.
Exactly. So,
Well, it was a simpler time.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Aubrey Herbert was how we learned that teeth don't have much to do with eyes, because that doesn't sound smart.
That's wild.
That doesn't sound right.
No.
So anyway, 11 people died within 10 years of opening the tomb. However, there were 58 people as part of that expedition. Now, granted, that's a fifth of them.
I'm about to say, honestly, that doesn't really sway me away from thinking that that's weird.
Correct. But then you get into the sort of like parsing out of like, well, you'll get cursed, but you won't. Then you'll get cursed, but you won't. Why some people, but not others?
Are there any theories for that? Were there any people who touched a certain thing or were working together on one aspect of the project or anything like that?
I'm not going to say no, but I don't have that answer.
Okay.
I
Well,
would imagine
I mean, probably
that many people have debated this over the course of decades, nearly 100 years. We're coming up on the 100th anniversary of the opening of King Tut's tomb.
I would think if that were the case that we would know about it, so probably not.
Yeah, exactly. But for sure, there are more people that are saying, hey, like this was a high-profile discovery. So couple that with the fact that we do know that there had been warnings inside some tombs, and then sprinkle on top of that the sort of morbid fascination of people looking at another culture and pointing a finger at it and going like, we don't understand you.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got...
So you're scary.
Exactly. And suddenly you've got a gigantic urban legend.
It's an urban legend I really enjoy.
Yes. But again, to talk about a little bit, some of the tombs that do have curses associated with them. In the Tomb of Cantika, here's a quote. As for all men who shall enter this tomb impure, there will be judgment. An end shall be made for him. I shall seize his neck like a bird. I shall cast the fear of myself into him.
I want that on my grave.
Isn't that's awesome?
Really sweet.
I shall seize his neck like a bird.
Oh, man.
By which I mean to say, Not at all. I've never caught a bird by the neck. But I will.
You know, that familiar reference that we all understand.
I know. But I will cast fear of myself into you.
Yes, me too.
You will fear me. I'm going to talk about this guy a lot. Archaeologist Zahi Hawass. He gives an example of a curse that you might find. Cursed be those who disturb the rest of a pharaoh. They that shall break the seal of this tomb shall meet death by disease that no doctor can diagnose.
Ooh.
How great is that?
Awesome.
That sounds like thinner.
Yeah. I curse you thinner. Yeah.
Or, boy, what's the Sam Raimi Evil Dead? Drag Me to Hell.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
She gets cursed and there's nothing that can be done about it. It defies any rational explanation.
Yeah, that's good.
To be in that situation, I feel like you would just go mad right there on the spot.
That would drive me nuts if somebody was like, you have this thing, like a supernatural curse that there's no doing anything about.
Yeah. All right. Here are some supposed accounts of times that Zahi Hawass came across sort of curious, scary things in his work as an archaeologist.
Cool.
All right. Now, I'm not saying that these aren't true. He does seem to be a professional person even today.
Yep.
So, but I'm
really?
still as a yeah. Everybody look up Zahi Hawass.
That's awesome.
Reading his stories, he feels like somebody should just do a modern day Indiana Jones with this guy because it's like he's got listen to some of this stuff.
Okay.
When he was young, working as a young archaeologist, he was transporting artifacts from a Greco-Roman site called Kam Abu Below. His cousin died that day. 1 year later, his uncle died.
Oh man.
2 years after that, his aunt died.
Huh.
Yeah. So you could weave a story out of that. I'm not saying that in and of
Sure.
itself that is frightening.
No, but you could absolutely weave something out of that.
To be honest, it sounds more of a tragedy for his cousin's family.
Yeah, totally. That doesn't strike me as that cursey.
Right. But for sure, he seems to be
It's
drawing
enough
a line.
of a spread. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Plus, it's this sort of idea
Not that it's
of
not
like,
horrible.
I do something wrong, so it affects you?
Yeah. Yeah, like
Is
was that
that to
like
hurt me?
was that like a
Because-
close cousin or like,
Exactly.
use a little more information.
True. He encountered a curse when excavating the tombs of the builders of the pyramids of Giza. Quote, all people who enter this tomb, who will make evil against this tomb and destroy it, may the crocodile be against them in water, and snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in water, the scorpion against them on land. Though not superstitious, he left those mummies alone.
Interesting. That's pretty cool.
It also goes to show you.
Also a little bit of a redundant mummy.
Very redundant. I left the full thing as I found it weird.
Yeah.
Cutting
and
out the
also the
hippopotamus.
hippo in water, and then also the scorpion also on land.
What do you want on your tombstone? Well, pepperoni. But also,
God.
I want you to say, may the crocodile be against them in water, and the snakes against them on land. All right, very good. And also,
Yeah.
the hippopotamus against them on water. And the scorpion, sir. Like, we're running out of
Holding
room.
a pen. Like,
Your
you
tomb's not that
dying?
big.
Yeah.
You weren't that big a deal.
it's not like you're Tutankhamun.
Later, this same man, Zahi Hawass, was involved in the removal of 2 child mummies from the Bahariya oasis. He was haunted by the children in his dreams. The phenomena did not stop until the mummy of the father was reunited with the children in the museum.
That's cool.
How cool is that?
Very.
Bringing families back together.
That's very cool.
And even like the implication that proximity is important.
Yeah.
Like, as long as I'm near my boys.
Right.
Or I guess for them, because he's having nightmares of the children.
Right.
Like, you've brought us back to our father. We'll leave you.
Right.
Now,
Interesting.
Zahi Hawass eventually came to the conclusion that mummies should not be displayed, which I also think is interesting and tying it into sort of the more mystical things that he may or may not have experienced.
Right.
It's just interesting. He also says he knew a sick boy who was miraculously cured when he looked into the eyes of the mummy of King Ahmose I.
I always think it's interesting when I think it's interesting when anybody has these opinions or beliefs or whatever, but I always find it interesting when it's somebody who's an expert in that field has like supernatural leanings towards something that's also in that field. You know what I mean? It's interesting that somebody who is an archaeologist who's like studied this stuff on an academic level then thinks these things.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But really, like,
gives
I
it like
feel
a different kind of credence.
There's such potential in storytelling from this. Like, it makes me think of Father, it's not Father Karras from The Exorcist. Who's the other one? The old priest.
Oh, man. I don't remember.
Whatever. The old priest from the beginning of The Exorcist, that 5-hour-long prologue where he's walking through the desert and he finds a statue of Pazuzu.
Yeah.
Like, writing down my notes for this show tonight.
Yeah.
It just
You
made
felt
me
like that
wanna
old man
watch.
priest?
I just felt like an old man.
Yeah.
It just made me want to watch Indiana Jones so badly.
Indiana Jones is so sweet.
Breaking into a tomb and stuff. Oh my gosh. They're supposed to be filming Indiana Jones 5 next year.
Yeah.
I think.
Yep.
Definitely take your time on that, boys.
Yeah, I think Harrison Ford has all the time in the world.
Yeah. You know what? Why don't you take another summer off? I'm sure it'll be fine. You know, why don't you start in 2020? That seems like a fresh start.
Look, he could kick my ass up and down the street, so I shouldn't joke too much about it, but...
That also sounds like something he might say. Feels like a very elderly man phrase. I'll kick your ass up and down the street. Oh, okay, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Now, going along with the fact that people sort of like fetishized mummies and that culture and everything, it used to be a big thing for the wealthy to just go ahead and buy mummies and have viewing parties. So, like, it's as if I bought a mummy and I'm like, hey, let's have everybody come over tonight. We're going to unwrap the mummy. And then by exposing it to air, they're all of a sudden like decomposing on the spot.
Wait, are they doing that with that intention? Like they know that? Or are you just saying that's a weird side effect?
No. Yes, it's a weird side effect. But my understanding is that was some of the fascination.
That's desirable.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
It's crazy.
Rich people are cray-cray.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they do it today.
Well, maybe they do some other weird stuff.
I'm looking at you, Zuckerberg. I knew I shouldn't have told you all my secrets.
Have some sort of weird fight club where they use like ancient antiquities as weapons and stuff.
Yeah.
That's only for dork.
I feel like that was
aggressive dork rich people.
It's a pretty good joke to be like, but I told Mark Zuckerberg all my secrets. I thought I could trust him. Find out like I sold them all. You sold all of them?
You sold me out.
Did you keep any of them? Anyway, in 1699, Louis Pénichet wrote an account in which a Polish traveler purchased 2 mummies in Alexandria and embarked on a sea journey with the mummies in the cargo hold. The traveler was alarmed by recurring visions of 2 specters, and the stormy seas did not abate until the mummies were thrown overboard.
Oh, no.
So one way or another,
oh no,
we're going to absolutely destroy
completely
history, culture,
human beings, bodies.
Find a way to remove your dignity thousands of years after you died. Isn't that crazy?
Yes. I can't believe that. For some reason, that story in particular really brought the point home to me that people were just like buying mummies, human bodies.
But additionally, I'd be very
cool.
scared.
That's pretty crazy that he was seeing specters until the mummies were not in his possession or by him anymore.
Yeah. All right, now we're gonna wrap this up. I considered,
so to speak.
So to speak, we're going to wrap back up the mummies. Remember we used to have Halloween parties as children, and we would wrap each other with toilet paper to play Who's the Mummy Now? And I don't know, it's probably not called that, but that's a great name for it. It was a race to
Who's
see
your mummy? Wow, see ya.
Oh my god. Anyway, I considered whether or not I should go into the plot of all the mummy movies for a while.
Oh god.
I won't. I'm not going to. It did make me also want to watch the mummy movies. Did you know that Bricktown Fraser's character in those movies is called Rick O'Connell?
Really?
Yeah. Doesn't that sound like that sounds like a fake name?
Yes, that is not a good movie name. Are they good? I think I've seen all of them.
I watched 5 minutes of The Mummy 1.
To make you want more?
No. It starts with Rick O'Connell shooting 2 guns.
Rick O'Connell?
Yeah. But every time he shoots the guns, it seems like he didn't go through weapons training.
Oh.
So he doesn't seem natural holding these 2 pistols as he's fighting people. Brendan Fraser is like, he's got his shoulders hunched up. He's like trying to mime that he's shooting, I guess. And they'll put the muzzle flash in later. So he's just constantly hunching his shoulders. It looks incredibly unnatural.
It's the kickback, you know?
I guess, but like, it looked terrible.
Silly.
Yeah. And then the Tom Cruise one. The less said, the better. Although I will
Talk about disrespectful.
I will say that movie, they took the mummy character, which in the Brendan Fraser movies, which in the original Universal horror movies from the 1930s, were male characters named Imhotep that were concerned with finding their sort of like resurrected bride.
Yeah.
The Tom Cruise movie did a switcheroo. So the mummy that is kicking off the events of the film is a female mummy.
Okay.
And I found out that might have its roots in the origin of fictional mummy storytelling.
Ooh.
This is...
Elaborate further.
I found this very fascinating and worth looking into. Some of the original mummy stories, because everything that we talked about is about, unsealing a tomb and befalling a curse. We'll open this up. We're disrespecting the honor of this person. I'm going to die later of some illness. But we also tend to think about mummies as being shambling corpses, zombie-like, sort of the, magically resurrected type thing with their arms out wrapped in gauze. Where did that come from? It seems like it came from 1827 when Jane Webb wrote a story called The Mummy, or A Tale of the 22nd Century. 1827. Now,
interesting.
This was the first of a few mummy stories.
It's very early.
Also including Lost in a Pyramid, or The Mummy's Curse, which I like that type of old story name.
Yeah.
Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb.
Right.
I love this sort of lengthy, it's this or that. I kind of like that.
Yeah.
So Louisa May Alcott wrote another story in 1869. The Mummy's Soul was published by Anonymous, 1862.
Was Louisa May Alcott's was it like I guess if it's Or the Mummy's Curse.
Yeah.
Because she wrote Little Women, I believe.
Well, Jane Austen wrote After
interesting.
3,000 Years, another mummy story in 1868. One of the thematic through lines through all these stories, female mummy getting back at male explorers who have desecrated their tombs, believed to have actually been very sort of proto-feminist storytelling about men.
Yeah.
And how they are actually, sort of violently taking things from women.
Right.
Sort of like very feminist revenge stories is what mummy storytelling in this vein started as.
That's cool.
How fascinating
that makes me want to look those up.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. That's so cool.
Now, interesting sidebar about the very, very first of these. Jane Webb wrote The Mummy, or A Tale of the 22nd Century. It was very positively reviewed. It depicted a future, because it's the 22nd century. It takes place in the year 21 something. She talks about how there are steam-powered doctors, mechanical doctors.
That's cool.
I read something that there's a vague allusion to something that you could interpret as being a sort of archaic internet kind of thing. So it's distinctly sci-fi and mummy.
Right.
Very interesting. I'm kind of intrigued by that even in and of itself.
Yeah.
But it drew positive reviews, one of which was written by John Claudius Loudon. In 1830, John Claudius Loudon, the reviewer, tracked down Jane Webb, the author, and they were married 1 year later.
That's so cool.
How sweet is that?
I love that.
He just loved her story.
Yeah. I bet there's a really cool story there.
Is it? Yeah.
I wish there was a movie about that.
And it's the birthplace of a famous movie monster.
Right.
One way or another. I feel like there's a lot to be said about our depiction of the mummy as being sort of culturally insensitive, at least.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because storytelling is also typically used as a vehicle for expressing something else that is metaphorical in nature.
Yeah.
And it seems like that's what mummy storytelling was. I find that very fascinating.
So interesting. And then how that got twisted, basically.
And especially for something that has endured to today.
Yeah.
Because even if there hasn't been a good mummy movie potentially ever, it's something that everybody's familiar with.
Was the female mummy in the Tom Cruise stinker, was that her storyline at all? Or was she just a bad guy?
She was just a bad guy.
Okay.
I found it very disappointing.
Would have been too interesting, I guess. That is so interesting to me that it was a feminist kind of revenge story.
Right? I think it's pretty
against
cool.
men who take things. That's so cool.
Which is partially what makes the recent Mummy movie even more problematic.
Yeah.
I'm going to spoil the Mummy movie.
Yeah.
We're wrapping up the show anyway.
Yeah.
Spoilers, if you don't want to know what happens in the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, I respect that. You don't need to know anything. But yeah, get out now, as I'm about to say what happens. So in that movie, the mummy is somebody who was bad, which I think is the right way to go. You have to be like it's not just that every mummy is scary and evil, because then you're getting into the problem of just being like, well, no, this was part of our society, man.
Yeah.
Like, don't just tell us that we were all monsters.
Right.
So it has to be that she was villainous when she was alive. She dies, she's punished, she's buried. She was buried in... her tomb was buried under mercury to keep people away, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was a cool idea to be like, people go away. Like, it's buried in toxic material.
Right.
Tom Cruise releases her, and he is cursed. Right. So that's what makes him special.
Why does he release her? Is he an archaeologist and he was just like doing research?
He's an impulsive archaeologist. He's very...
The impulsive archaeologist.
He feels like that character should not be being played by Tom Cruise. He's very smarmy. And it really feels like if it were played by Chris Pratt, it would make a lot more sense.
Okay, I can picture that kind of character real quick. Is that the fake butt movie?
I don't think so.
Okay, I don't think so
Wasn't that
either.
like Mr. Viking or something?
Mr. Viking? No, but...
Oh, that's my spec script.
Valkyrie. Valkyrie, that's what it is.
Valkyrie.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Viking is my story about a Viking lost in time who lands in modern-day New York City and accidentally gets a job at a public school.
Sure.
So anyway.
Public school.
I ran out of breath.
I know.
So by the end of the movie, Tom Cruise has stolen the mummy's powers.
Okay, great.
He is the mummy now.
Oh my God.
Who is the mummy now? Tommy Cruise. By the end of the movie, he's wearing a bandana that covers most of his face, which I think is meant to evoke.
Right, it's
similar
mummy-esque.
imagery. Yep. And they're like, what will become of him now? Will he choose to work for good or for evil? We may never know. Especially because the dark universe, the shared universe of all the Universal monster movies, is definitely canceled.
Right, exactly. That's why we don't know.
So
Yeah.
Tom Cruise desecrates her tomb, steals her power, kills her,
Yeah,
and so it's just his now.
great.
Which feels more metaphorical of what we have done to that sort of culture. So maybe in a weird way,
I don't know if that's how they meant it, but it is weirdly fitting.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, Kristen, with
William.
that, I conclude the story of The Mummy.
Excellent. That was awesome.
Yeah.
I find Egyptian history really interesting.
I find it very
Like
cool.
that kind of era.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Always one of my favorite sections of a museum.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just feels different. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
I guess that's why. It also feels like one of those things where it's like you have to imagine a society that was once so great.
Right.
And
right.
it's hard to understand how that, because it also means like this could all go.
Well, yeah. I think also just everything was given so much care and respect in such a visual and tangible way.
Yeah.
I just think it's really interesting, like all the iconography and all of the totems and things like that. I just really like all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
There you have it.
Well, that wraps it up for this week.
So there it is. That's the episode that we recorded way back in 2018, back when Guide to the Unknown was still just in the double digits. Isn't that weird? Episode 24. It feels like it was a million years ago. I think the only thing that's really different now, though, is that I'm no longer the Haunted Sponge online. Now I'm the Myth Traveler. Gigantic change. Hope you had a good time, everybody. Super fun taking a look back. And again, we will see you this Friday for more mummy fun, so definitely join us there. But until that time comes, we must once again travel back again to the netherworld. Go we.